A waitress quietly fed a German shepherd daily, never knowing its owner was a Navy SEAL. What she didn't realize was that her small act of kindness was about to save her life. Because the men who were coming for her had made one fatal mistake. They thought she was alone. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from. And if you want to support the channel, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. Pine Haven, Oregon, sat where the forest met the sea. A logging town that time had half forgotten. The Pacific crashed against black rocks below while Douglas firs climbed the ridges above, their tops disappearing into fog that never fully burned away. Rain fell in sheets most days, turning unpaved roads to mud and filling the air with the smell of wet earth and rotting cedar. The town clung to the coastline like a barnacle, 3,000 souls who'd either been born here or come here to disappear. November had arrived, cold and gray. Storm clouds gathered offshore, dark and patient, waiting to unleash something violent. The kind of weather that made smart people stay indoors and desperate people make mistakes. Jackson Mercer had come to Pine Haven for the silence. At 34, he carried himself with the economy of motion that marked men who'd learned to conserve energy in places where waste meant death. 6'2", 185 pounds of lean muscle wrapped in flannel and denim, he moved through the world like smoke, present but not intrusive. His hair had been regulation short once, now it touched his collar, dark brown, shot through with premature gray at the temples. His eyes were the color of winter storms, watchful and calculating, the kind that noticed everything and revealed nothing. Those eyes had seen things in Kandahar, in Ramadi, in the Hindu Kush. They'd seen his team torn apart by an IED on a dusty road in Syria 8 months ago. He'd survived. 5 others hadn't. The Navy had given him medals, medical retirement, and 30 days of terminal leave to figure out what came next. He'd chosen this forgotten corner of Oregon because nobody asked questions here, and the ocean's roar drowned out the screams that still echoed in his head at 3 in the morning. The cabin he'd rented sat 4 miles outside town, accessible only by a logging road that became impassable in heavy rain. 1 room, a wood stove, no television, spotty cell service. Perfect. He wasn't alone, though. He'd never be alone again. Titan lay by the wood stove, 95 pounds of black and tan German shepherd, 4 years old and every inch a weapon. The dog's ears swiveled constantly, tracking sounds Jack's human hearing couldn't catch. Titan wasn't a pet. He was a partner, forged in the same fire that had nearly consumed them both. Military working dog, explosive detection specialist, retired when the same blast that had killed Jack's team had filled the dog's shoulder with shrapnel. They'd recovered in adjacent rooms at Landstuhl, 2 broken pieces of the same machine. The dog wore his scars better. A slight hitch in his left front leg, nothing more. Jack's scars were harder to see, but cut deeper. Their routine had settled into something almost peaceful over the past month. Wake before dawn, run 6 miles through the forest, Titan ranging ahead and circling back, both of them pretending they weren't scanning for threats that didn't exist here. Breakfast, chores that didn't need doing but filled the hours. Titan would sleep by the stove, while Jack read, or stared at walls, or tried not to think about the messages from his sister that he hadn't answered in 3 weeks. Twice a week, they drove into town for supplies. Jack spoke to no one unless necessary. Titan stayed in the truck, watching through the window with eyes that missed nothing. It was on one of these supply runs, a Tuesday morning wrapped in cold drizzle, that their isolation began to crack. The Harbor Diner sat on Main Street, a narrow building squeezed between a hardware store and a vacant lot. Jack had passed it a dozen times without stopping, but the grocery didn't open for another hour and the coffee in his cabin had run out. Small compromises. He parked the truck where he could see it from inside, left the windows cracked for Titan, and pushed through the diner's door. A bell chimed. 6 customers scattered among the booths, all of them locals who glanced up and then away, recognizing a stranger who wanted to stay that way. The air smelled like bacon grease and burned coffee, underlaid with decades of cigarette smoke that no amount of cleaning could erase. A jukebox in the corner played something country and mournful. Jack took the counter seat nearest the door, back to the wall, eyes on the entrance. Old habits. The waitress appeared from the kitchen, order pad already in hand. Late 30s, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, brown eyes that held the particular weariness of someone who worked double shifts for so long they couldn't remember what rested felt like. Her name tag read Elena. She wore the standard uniform, black pants and white shirt, but carried herself with a dignity that the stained apron couldn't diminish. Coffee? Her voice was warm, despite the exhaustion, the faint trace of an accent softening the edges of her words. Please, black. She poured without comment. Movements efficient and practiced. You're in the Mackenzie cabin. Not a question. Word travels. Small town. Anything else? Just the coffee. She nodded and moved to check on other customers, leaving Jack to his silence. He wrapped both hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into his palms, and watched the rain streak down the window. Across the street, a real estate office displayed glossy posters advertising Pinehaven Heights, luxury living on the Oregon coast. The images showed condos and resort amenities that had nothing to do with the town outside. The bell chimed again. 3 men entered, bringing the smell of cigarettes and something darker. They moved with the swagger of people who'd learned that intimidation worked better than courtesy. The first was tall and thick, neck red from sun or drink, with a shaved head and prison tattoos crawling up from his collar. His brother, clearly, followed a step behind. Same build, but softer, meaner around the eyes. The third was elder, 40s maybe, wearing a security company jacket and the expression of someone who enjoyed his work too much. They didn't sit. They arranged themselves near the counter, near Elena, in a configuration that Jack's tactical mind immediately categorized as deliberate positioning, blocking the kitchen door, controlling her movement. Elena's shoulders tightened, but she approached with her order pad. Morning, Derek. Travis, Kyle, what can I get you? The one in the security jacket, Derek, smiled without warmth. Not here for food, Elena. Here with a message. I've heard the messages. Answer still no. Mr. Hyland's getting impatient. Last offer was more than fair. $150,000 for 2 acres? That's generous. Property's worth $300, and it's not for sale at any price. Travis, the bigger brother, leaned against the counter. You're being stupid. Take the money. Move somewhere nice. That kid of yours deserves better than this dump anyway. Something flickered in Elena's eyes, quick and dangerous, but her voice stayed level. My daughter is none of your concern, and this conversation is over. Derek's smile disappeared. Conversation's over when Mr. Hyland says it's over. You've got until Friday to reconsider. After that, things might get complicated. CPS gets involved. Maybe they decide a single mom working double shifts isn't providing adequate supervision. Maybe the health inspector finds violations. Maybe your piece of shit car fails inspection and gets impounded. He let each threat hang in the air like cigarette smoke. Lots of ways this gets complicated, Elena. Or you sign the papers and everyone's happy. Get out of my diner. Not your diner. You just work here. Kyle, the meaner brother, picked up a salt shaker and dropped it. It shattered on the tile floor, white crystals exploding across worn linoleum. Clumsy. Better clean that up before someone gets hurt. They left, laughing, the bell chiming cheerfully behind them. The other customers suddenly found their plates fascinating. A universal response of people who'd learned not to see trouble. Elena stood motionless for 3 heartbeats, and grabbed a broom from the back and began sweeping with sharp, angry strokes. Jack remained still, coffee cooling in his hands. Not his fight, not his town. He'd come here to escape exactly this kind of complication. Getting involved meant questions, attention, entanglement. Everything he'd come here to avoid. He finished his coffee, left a $10 bill on the counter for a $3 cup, and walked out without a word. Titan raised his head as Jack climbed into the truck, muting his handler's tension immediately. The dog's ears flicked forward, questioning. Not our problem, Jack said quietly, starting the engine. But as he drove away, checking the mirror by habit, he saw Elena through the diner window, standing alone among empty tables, still holding the broom, shoulders bent under a weight he recognized all too well, the weight of fighting alone. The rain didn't stop. 3 days passed, each one grayer than the last. Jack maintained his routine with the discipline that had kept him alive in worse places. Run at dawn, chop wood that didn't need chopping. Clean weapons that were already clean. Anything to occupy the hours between nightmares. But the diner scene played on repeat in his head. The way Elena's shoulders had tensed. The casual cruelty in those men's voices. The broken salt shaker glittering on dirty tile like shrapnel. Not your fight, he reminded himself. You came here to disappear, not to play hero. Thursday afternoon, Fountain back in town, telling himself he needed propane and batteries, not admitting he was driving past the Harbor Diner to check if it was still standing. The building looked the same. Elena's car, a battered Honda Civic with 200,000 miles and a cracked windshield, sat in the employee spaces behind the building. Titan shifted in the passenger seat, attention fixed on something outside. The dog's body went rigid, that particular stillness that preceded action. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Jack followed the dog's gaze. A girl, maybe 9 years old, stood at the diner's back door. Small for her age, dark hair in 2 braids, wearing a jacket too thin for the weather. She held a foam container, the kind restaurants used for leftovers. She was looking directly at Titan, not with fear, but with the cautious interest of a kid who understood animals. Elena appeared in the doorway behind her, one hand protective on the girl's shoulder. She said something Jack couldn't hear. The girl nodded and carefully approached the truck, stopping 10 feet away. Is he friendly? Her voice was quiet, careful. Jack glanced at Titan. The dog's growl had stopped, replaced by intense focus. Reading the child, assessing threat level, finding none. He can be. What's your name? Sophie. My mom says I shouldn't bother you, but I saved some chicken from lunch service. I thought maybe your dog was hungry. She held up the container. We see you drive past sometimes. He looks like he's working hard, guarding you. Something in Jack's chest, something he'd thought was permanently calcified, shifted. That's kind of you. His name is Titan. Like the moon? Like the giants from Greek mythology. Sophie considered this seriously. That's a good name for a big dog. She set the container on the ground, backed up 3 steps with the awareness of someone who'd been taught to respect animals, and waited. Jack looked at Titan. The dog's ears were forward, tail in neutral position. Curious, not aggressive. Titan. Easy. Check. The German Shepherd flowed out of the truck with liquid grace despite his old injury, approached the container, sniffed thoroughly, then looked back at Jack for permission. Years of training holding against instinct. Okay. Titan ate carefully, efficiently, the way he did everything. Sophie watched with the delighted fascination of a child who didn't get to be a child often enough. When the food was gone, Titan sat without being commanded and allowed Sophie to carefully touch the top of his head. Once, twice. The dog's tail swept the wet pavement. Elena had moved closer, hovering in that space between allowing independence and maintaining protection. Up close, Jack could see what the diner's fluorescent lights had hidden. A bruise on her left forearm, greenish yellow, a week old maybe. Dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Hands that trembled slightly when she thought no one was looking. Sophie, we need to get home before dark. Elena's voice was gentle with her daughter, but her eyes when they met Jack's held wariness, assessing him the way he'd assessed countless potential threats. Wondering if he was another danger in a world that seemed full of them. Thank you for letting me feed him, Sophie said formally. The kind of politeness that had been drilled in by a parent trying to teach dignity in difficult circumstances. He appreciated it. Jack kept his voice low, non-threatening. So did I. They turned to leave. Jack should have let them, should have climbed back in his truck and driven away, back to his cabin and his isolation and his careful routine of forgetting. Instead, he heard himself say, Mrs. Vasquez, the men from Tuesday, they come back? Elena stopped, her spine straightened, pride warring with exhaustion. That's not your concern. Maybe not, but if they do, you should document everything. Photographs, recordings if possible, witnesses, build a record. You think I haven't? The words came out sharper than she probably intended. I filed 3 police reports. Sheriff Cullen says it's civil matter, not criminal. My lawyer says without proof of direct threats, there's nothing actionable. The city council won't return my calls because Marcus Highland donates to all their campaigns. She stopped, seeming to realize she was unloading on a stranger. I'm sorry. That's not your problem. We'll be fine. But her voice on those last 3 words carried no conviction at all. Sophie tugged her mother's hand. Mom, we should go. It's getting dark. They walked to the Civic. The car started on the 3rd try, belching blue smoke. Jack watched them drive away, Titan sitting at his heel. Both of them trained to recognize when someone was in over their head. He pulled out his phone. 1 bar of service. Enough. He scrolled through contacts he hadn't accessed in months, found the one he needed, and typed a message. Need background check. Marcus Highland, Highland Development Corporation. Pinehaven, Oregon. Quiet inquiries only. The response came back in 30 seconds. You back in the game? Just looking. Call it personal curiosity. Roger, give me 6 hours. Jack pocketed the phone. This was reconnaissance only. Information gathering, not involvement. Certainly not commitment. Just a look, just to know what was happening in the town where he'd chosen to live temporarily. Situational awareness. Standard procedure. He almost believed it. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. The wind had picked up, driving rain against the cabin's windows in rhythmic waves. Titan paced, restless, moving from door to window and back, ears swiveling toward sounds Jack couldn't distinguish from the storm's chaos. At 0200 hours, the dog froze. Head up, body rigid, focused on something beyond the walls. A growl built low in his chest, the warning sound that had saved Jack's life in 3 different countries. Jack was moving before conscious thought, sliding from the bed, pulling on pants and boots, grabbing the Sig Sauer P226 from the lockbox beside his bed. He moved to the window, staying back from the glass, and looked out into rain-soaked darkness. Nothing visible. But Titan didn't react to nothing. He pulled on a jacket, attached a tactical light to the Sig's rail, and moved to the door. Titan, with me, quiet. They went out into the storm together. Man and dog moving in practiced synchronization. The rain was cold enough to hurt, driven nearly horizontal by wind howling down from the ridgeline. Jack's light cut through darkness in controlled sweeps, clearing angles, checking shadows. Titan ranged ahead, nose down despite the rain, tracking something. He led Jack down the logging road, away from the cabin, moving with purpose. Quarter mile, half mile. Then the dog stopped, sat, looked back, the signal for found. Jack approached carefully, light up, weapon ready. At first he thought it was just a tree knocked down by wind. Then his light caught the details that didn't fit. Fresh tire tracks in the mud, already filling with water but still visible. Broken saplings on both sides of the road, bent the wrong way. And in the center of the road, arranged deliberately, a stack of lumber pulled from someone's property, studded with nails, pointing upward. A trap for tires. For someone driving too fast in the dark to stop in time. For someone like Elena, driving home after a late shift with her daughter in the car. But this wasn't the road to Elena's house. This was Jack's road. The only road to his cabin. Someone was sending a message. Stay out of it. Mind your business. Disappear like you came here to do. Jack stood in the rain, water running down his face, looking at the crude barricade. In Kandahar, he'd learned to recognize escalation patterns. A difference between harassment and prelude to violence. This was the second. This was a threat made physical. His phone vibrated. The background check, arriving early. He scrolled through the file, reading by tactical light while Titan sat patient guard. Marcus Highland, 52, CEO of Highland Development Corporation. Net worth estimated at $60 million. 3 similar development projects in coastal Oregon and Washington over the past decade. Each one preceded by strategic acquisition of key properties, pattern of forced sales, eminent domain abuse, environmental violations settled with fines that were just cost of doing business. 2 lawsuits from previous property owners alleging intimidation. Both settled out of court with NDAs. And at the bottom, flagged by his contact, Derek Moss, head of security, former police officer, fired from Portland PD for excessive force. 2 assault charges, both dropped. Known association with Travis and Kyle Brennan, brothers with records including armed robbery, aggravated assault, and witness intimidation. This wasn't just a real estate dispute. This was a criminal enterprise with a corporate facade. Jack's phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. Mind your business, soldier boy. Next time we won't miss. They knew who he was. They'd researched him, found his cabin, sent people to threaten him on his own property. And if they'd do this to him, a trained operator who could defend himself, what would they do to a waitress with a 9-year-old daughter? Titan leaned against Jack's leg, solid and warm despite the rain. The dog looked up at him, waiting for orders, ready for whatever came next. Loyal in the way only dogs and brothers in arms could be. Loyal the way Jack's team had been, before the bomb had torn them apart. He'd failed them, failed to see the threat until too late, failed to protect them. He wouldn't fail again. Jack photographed the barricade from multiple angles, documented the tire tracks, and called it in to the county sheriff's office. He already knew nothing would happen, but created the paper trail anyway. Then he and Titan spent an hour dragging the lumber off the road, clearing the trap. As dawn broke gray and cold, Jack stood on his cabin's porch, watching rain sweep across the valley toward town, toward the harbor diner where Elena would be starting morning shift, toward the small house where Sophie would be getting ready for school. He'd come to Pine Haven to escape, to hide from responsibility and failure and the weight of caring about anything. But some things, once seen, couldn't be unseen. Some fights, once recognized, couldn't be walked away from. Not by him. Not anymore. "Looks like we've got work to do," he said quietly. Titan's tail swept once, agreement and anticipation. They went inside to plan. Friday arrived wrapped in fog so thick it turned the world gray and close. Jack woke at 0500 to Titan's low whine, the sound the dog made when something was wrong in a way he couldn't articulate. Not immediate danger, but wrongness in the fabric of things. Jack trusted that instinct more than his own. They ran despite the fog, Titan ranging ahead but staying closer than usual, circling back every 30 seconds instead of every minute. The forest was silent, except for their breathing and the soft percussion of their feet on wet earth. No birds, no small animals rustling through undergrowth, the kind of silence that preceded predators. Back at the cabin, Jack cleaned his weapons and checked his gear with the methodical precision of pre-mission routine. The Sig Sauer, his primary, a backup Glock 19 for ankle carry, Ka-Bar knife, tactical flashlight, basic medical kit, his phone, fully charged. He wasn't planning for combat, just preparing for reality. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. SEAL team axiom that had kept him breathing. At 0730, his phone rang. Unknown local number. "Yeah. Mr. Mercer?" A woman's voice, young, tight with controlled panic. "This is Carla Ruiz. I'm a reporter with the Coastal Observer. I got your number from Tom Breslin. He said you might be someone who could help." "Help with what?" "Elena Vasquez. Something's happened. I'm at her house now and it's bad. Really bad. She won't call the police because she says it won't help, but she needs someone, and Tom said you were military, and I know this isn't your problem, but please, she has a little girl and I don't know what else to do." Jack was moving before she finished, grabbing his jacket, keys, gesturing Titan to the truck. Address. She rattled it off. Jack knew the area, east side of town, where the houses got smaller and the pavement turned to gravel. 7 minutes. "I'm coming. Don't let her clean anything up. Don't touch anything. Document everything." Already doing that. He drove too fast for the fog, running on tactical instinct and the sick certainty that he'd waited too long, that his reconnaissance and careful planning had cost time someone didn't have. Titan braced in the passenger seat, feeding off Jack's tension, a body coiled and ready. The house appeared through fog like a ghost. Small, single-story, white paint peeling, but the yard neat. A child's swing set visible in the side yard. Elena's Civic sat in the driveway. Driver's window smashed, glass glittering on the seat. The front door hung open, crooked on its hinges. Jack parked and moved to the door, Titan at his heel. "Titan, easy, search." The dog went in first, clearing the small living room in seconds, communicating through body language that there were people, but no immediate threats. Jack followed, hand near his concealed cig, reading the room the way he'd read 1,000 rooms in 1,000 bad situations. Chaos. Furniture overturned, couch cushions slashed, stuffing pulled out like guts. Books swept from shelves, picture frames smashed, family photos torn. A child's artwork ripped from the refrigerator and shredded. Television screen cracked. This wasn't robbery. This was violation. This was a message written in destruction. Elena sat on the kitchen floor amid the wreckage, Sophie pressed against her side, both of them holding each other like survivors of a shipwreck. Elena's right eye was swelling shut, blood dried at the corner of her mouth. Her hands shook as they stroked Sophie's hair. The girl was silent. That terrible silence of children who'd learned that crying didn't help. A woman in her late 20s crouched beside them, phone out, photographing everything. Dark hair, sharp eyes behind glasses, anger radiating off her like heat. Carla Ruiz, Jack assumed. All three looked up as he entered. Sophie saw Titan and something flickered in her eyes, some small light in the darkness. The dog moved to her without command, sat close enough to touch, solid and warm and safe. "You came," Carla said, relief evident. Jack kept his voice low, calm, the tone he'd used with shell-shocked civilians in Fallujah. "Mrs. Vasquez, Elena, can you tell me what happened?" She tried to speak, couldn't, tried again. "They came around 3 this morning. I heard the window break, came out, and they were inside. 3 of them, masks on. They didn't say anything, just started destroying everything. I tried to stop them and one of them hit me. Sophie stayed in her room like I taught her, stayed quiet, but they found her anyway. One of them stood in her doorway, just stood there, letting her see him, making sure she understood that they could reach her any time they wanted." Her voice broke on the last word. Sophie pressed closer, still silent. "They left this, Carla." Arla held up a document in a plastic evidence bag she'd improvised from a freezer bag. Purchase agreement for Elena's property. $150,000. A line at the bottom for signature. And written in red marker across the top. "Final offer. Signed by 5 p.m. today or next time we take the girl." Jack took the bag, read the threat twice, felt something cold and familiar settle into his chest. The operational calm that came before violence. The clarity that arrived when all other options had burned away. "You called the sheriff? What's the point?" Elena's laugh was broken glass. "Cullen will say there's no proof who did it, that I should file a report, that he'll investigate. He'll do nothing. Just like the last 3 times. Highland owns him. Highland owns everyone. Not everyone." Jack pulled out his phone, snapped photos of the document, the destruction, Elena's injuries. "I need you to tell me everything. Every interaction with Highland or his people, every threat, every conversation, every detail you remember. Start from the beginning." For the next 20 minutes, Elena talked. Jack listened, Titan pressed against Sophie like a living security blanket, Carla recording everything on her phone. The story emerged in pieces. Marcus Highland had approached her a year ago, friendly at first, offering a fair price. When she declined, the offers had increased along with the pressure. Subtle at first, her property taxes mysteriously reassessed higher. Health inspections at the diner becoming more frequent, more aggressive. Then the direct threat started. The confrontation at the diner. Anonymous calls in the night. Notes left on her car. Each escalation calculated, each message clear. Sell or suffer. "Why you?" Jack asked. "Why is your property so important?" Carla answered. "Because of where it sits. Look." She pulled up a map on her phone. "Highland bought the old lumber mill and 12 surrounding properties. He's planning a luxury resort development, condos and a golf course and spa. But to access it from the highway, he needs a road through Elena's property. Without that access, the whole project stalls. He's got $50 million invested and investors breathing down his neck. He needs her land and he needs it now." Jack studied the map, military mind automatically assessing terrain and strategy. Elena's 2 acres formed a choke point, the only practical route between highway and development site. Without it, Highland would need to build 3 miles of new road through protected wetlands, permits that would take years and might never come. She wasn't just an obstacle, she was the obstacle. "The property's been in my husband's family for 60 years, Elena said quietly. "Miguel grew up there. We were going to build a real house, raise Sophie there. After he died, I kept it because it was the last piece of him, because it mattered." She looked at the destruction around her, at her daughter's hollow eyes. "But it's not worth this. It's not worth her being afraid in her own home. I'll sign. I'll give him what he wants." "No." Jack's voice was flat, absolute. "You sign under duress, he wins. He learns that violence works, and 6 months from now, he does this to someone else. What choice do I have? Look around. This is what happens when I say no. This is what happens when you fight alone." Jack crouched to Elena's level, meeting her eyes. "I'm former Navy SEAL, 8 years in the teams. I've dealt with worse than Marcus Highland in places that made this look like summer camp. If you want to walk away, I understand. But if you want to stand your ground, I can help you do that." "Why?" Suspicion and hope fought in her voice. You don't know me. This isn't your fight. Jack glanced at Sophie, at Titan pressed protective against her side, at the torn pictures of a family that had already lost too much. He thought of his team, of the mission he'd failed, of the guilt that had driven him to this forgotten town looking for peace that didn't exist. Maybe I'm tired of watching good people get hurt while bad people win. Maybe I need to remember what I trained for wasn't just survival, it was protection. Or maybe I just really hate bullies. He stood, decision made, path forward clear. Either way, they made a mistake when they came after you. They thought you were alone. They were wrong. Carla was already nodding. I've been investigating Highland for 6 months. I've got documentation of 4 other properties he acquired through intimidation. Witnesses too scared to go on record, but they'll talk. With Elena's case, with what happened here, I can build a story that brings real scrutiny. State police. Maybe even FBI if we can prove a pattern of criminal enterprise. Evidence doesn't matter if she's not alive to testify. Jack's tactical mind was already running scenarios. They gave a deadline, 5 p.m. today. When she doesn't show up to sign, they'll escalate. Come here, or grab her at work, or go after Sophie at school. We need to get you both somewhere safe, somewhere they can't reach you while we build the case. Where? Highland has people everywhere. My cabin, 4 miles out, single access road, defensive position. I'll see them coming long before they see me, and I'll make sure they regret coming at all. Elena looked at him for a long moment, weighing trust against desperation. Then she looked at her daughter, at the fear in those 2 old eyes, and made the same calculation every parent in an impossible situation eventually made. She chose to believe in something, anything, that might keep her child safe. Okay. Pack clothes for 3 days, essentials only. Medications, documents, anything you can't replace. Sophie's stuffed animals or whatever helps her sleep. 5 minutes. While Elena and Sophie gathered belongings, Jack walked the perimeter with Titan, reading the scene with professional eyes. 3 sets of boot prints in the mud outside. Size 11, 10, and 12 approximately. Work boots, heavy tread. They'd approached from the road, not trying to hide. Arrogant. Confident in their immunity from consequences. That confidence was about to become a liability. His phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Tick-tock, soldier boy. Stay out of it, or learn what we do to heroes. Jack typed back 1 word. Try. They were in his truck 10 minutes later, Elena in front, Sophie in back with Titan's head in her lap. The dog had appointed himself the girl's guardian. That invisible bond forming the way it sometimes did between working dogs and the vulnerable. Sophie's hand rested on Titan's head, the first point of calm in her storm. As they drove away from the violated house, Elena looked back once, grief and rage warring across her face. I'm sorry you got pulled into this. Jack kept his eyes on the road, on the fog that hid threats and opportunities equally. I'm not. They picked the wrong person to terrorize. Now they're going to learn what happens when someone picks up a fight they can't finish. In the rearview mirror, Sophie met his eyes. For the first time since he'd arrived, she spoke. Are you going to stop them? Jack thought of his team, of promises made and kept, of the oath he'd taken, that didn't expire just because the uniform came off. Yes. Promise? I promise. Titan's tail thumped once against the seat. The war had begun. The cabin became a fortress by noon. Jack moved through preparations with the methodical efficiency of someone who'd fortified positions in worse places under worse conditions. Sophie watched from the couch, wrapped in a blanket, Titan's head resting on her lap. Elena helped where she could, hands still trembling, but steadying as purpose replaced helplessness. Jack swept the perimeter first, Titan ranging ahead, both of them reading the terrain with tactical eyes. Single access road, defendable. Dense forest on 3 sides, advantage if you knew how to use it. He placed motion sensors at 200-yard intervals along the road. Small units that would ping his phone if anything larger than a deer approached. Hunting cameras in trees, night vision capable, covering approaches from the forest. Not military grade, but good enough. Inside, he cleared sightlines, moved furniture away from windows, established fallback positions. The cabin's single room became a tactical space, every angle considered, every shadow evaluated. He showed Elena the safe spot, a reinforced closet in the back corner, concrete foundation on 2 sides. Only one approach angle. If shooting starts, you take Sophie there. Don't come out until I say. Understand? She nodded, face pale but determined. You really think they'll come here? I think they've already proven they're willing to escalate. Breaking into your house, threatening a child, that's not harassment anymore. That's criminal assault. They've crossed lines they can't uncross, which means they're committed now. They either finish this or face consequences. People like that don't back down. They double down. What about the police? Real police, not Cullen. Already motion. Jack showed her his phone. Messages to 3 contacts from his previous life. State police are sending someone to take Elena's statement this afternoon. My former CO is reaching out to FBI contacts about potential RICO violations. And I've got a friend in JAG who's looking into Highland's corporate structure for fraud indicators. But investigation takes time. Time you don't have if they come for you tonight. Carla arrived at 1300 hours, driving a Subaru packed with equipment. Laptop, cameras, recording gear, and 3 boxes of documents. She transformed the cabin's small table into a command center, spreading files and photos like a general planning a campaign. I've been tracking Highland for 6 months, she said, booting up her laptop. Started when my uncle lost his restaurant. Highland wanted the property for parking. Made a lowball offer. My uncle refused. Then suddenly the building failed inspection. Electrical problems that hadn't existed for 30 years. My uncle couldn't afford the repairs. Had to sell. Got half what the property was worth. She pulled up a spreadsheet, color-coded and cross-referenced. That's the pattern. 4 properties in Pinehaven, 3 in Gold Beach, 2 in Brookings. Same playbook every time. Identify target property. Make offer. Apply pressure through official channels first. Escalate to unofficial methods if necessary. Sheriff Cullen has been on Highland's payroll for at least 3 years. City Council too, except for Tom Breslin, which is why he's being pressured to resign. Jack studied the data, impressed despite himself. You've got enough here for multiple investigations. Why hasn't anyone acted? Because the victims are scared and Highland's lawyers are good. Everyone he's targeted has been isolated, vulnerable. Single mothers, elderly people, small business owners barely hanging on. People who can't afford legal fights and don't have political connections. He's smart about picking targets nobody will defend. He picked wrong this time. Clearly. Carla looked at Elena, at Sophie still curled with Titan. I need to ask you something. I want to publish this story, not later, now, today. Everything that's happened, everything Highland's done. Put it online where it can't be buried. Create public pressure that forces action. But that means painting a target on you, making this public in a way you can't take back. It's your call. Elena was quiet for a long moment, looking at her daughter. Then something hardened in her expression. The steel Jack had suspected existed under the exhaustion and fear. Do it. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of men like Highland, thinking they can take whatever they want. If my story helps stop him, it's worth it. It might get worse before it gets better. It's already worse. Now at least we fight back. Carla smiled, fierce and sharp. Give me 2 hours. Meanwhile, Jack made calls. His former platoon sergeant, now working private security in Seattle. Need eyes on a target. Marcus Highland, Highland Development Corporation. Where he is, who's with him, pattern of life. Nothing illegal, just surveillance. You back in the game, Jack? Just helping a friend. Right. Like Kandahar was just helping a friend. I'll make calls. Next, a contact at the county assessor's office. A veteran who'd served in the same unit as Jack's older brother. Need property records. Highland Development purchases in Pinehaven area. Last 3 years. Who sold, amounts paid, any liens or complications. That's public record, but I'll compile it. What are you into? Trying to. Stop a bad guy before he hurts more good people. Your specialty. Give me an hour. Finally, Tom Breslin, the former mayor Carla had mentioned. The old man answered on the second ring, voice gravelly with age and anger. Carla said you might call, said you're helping Elena. Trying to. Need information. Highland's local connections, who's on his payroll, who might be leveraged versus who's actively corrupt. That's a long list. Cullen's the obvious one, dirty as they come. City Council's compromised, except for me and Linda Morrison, but she's scared. Highland threatened her grandson's college scholarship somehow. Judge Patterson dismissed 2 cases against Highland last year, probably bought. You want the full accounting? I've got files going back 4 years. I've been documenting everything. waiting for someone who could actually do something about it. Bring them. Cabin 4 miles up the Mackenzie logging road. And Tom? Come careful. Assume you're being watched. Son, I was sneaking through enemy territory when your father was in diapers. I'll be there by 1500. The pieces were moving. The board was set. Jack felt the familiar pre-mission clarity settling over him. The calm that came from knowing the fight was inevitable, so you might as well prepare perfectly. Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted by trauma and the illusion of safety. Titan remained on guard beside her, head up, ears tracking every sound. Elena sat at the table with Carla, going through her story again, refining details, building the narrative that would become a weapon. Jack's phone pinged. Motion sensor, 200 yards out. He moved to the window, hand near his weapon, then relaxed. Tom Breslin's ancient pickup, moving slow, alone. The old man came in carrying a weathered briefcase and the wary alertness of someone who'd lived through things. 70 years old, but still solid, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He shook Jack's hand with a grip that had authority. Navy SEAL, Carla said. Lord knows this town needs one. We're drowning in corruption and nobody seems to care. I care. Jack gestured to the table. Show me what you've got. For the next hour, they built the case. Tom's files were meticulous, evidence gathered with the patience of someone who understood that truth mattered, even when justice delayed. Property transfers, meeting minutes where Highland had made veiled threats, complaints filed and ignored, witnesses who'd been silenced through intimidation or payment. Combined with Carla's investigation and Elena's testimony, it painted a clear picture. Marcus Highland wasn't just a ruthless developer. He was running a criminal enterprise. Extortion, intimidation, witness tampering, assault. Federal charges if they could prove the pattern. At 1500 hours, Carla hit publish. The story went live on 3 platforms simultaneously: regional news site, her own blog, and social media. She'd titled it simply, The Man Who Owns Pinehaven, How Marcus Highland Built an Empire on Fear. Jack's phone started buzzing within minutes. The state police contact confirming an investigator was en route. His CO with FBI contact information, and a promise that someone would call within 24 hours. Even a message from his sister, who he hadn't spoken to in weeks. Saw the story. That's you happing, isn't it? Be careful. Love you. But there was another message too, from the unknown number that had been threatening him. You just made a big mistake. Should have stayed out of it. Now everyone gets hurt. Jack showed it to Carla. Screenshot this. Send it to the state police. That's evidence of conspiracy. They're really going to come, aren't they? Yes. Question is when. The answer arrived at 1630 hours. Titan stood suddenly, body rigid, staring at the door. The growl that rumbled from his chest was primal, the sound that had preceded violence in a dozen countries. Every motion sensor along the road pinged simultaneously. The hunting cameras showed 3 vehicles approaching, moving fast despite the rough road. 2 trucks and an SUV, tinted windows, pushing through the rain that had started falling again. Jack was already moving, muscle memory and training taking over. Elena, Sophie, closet now. Tom, Carla, get down behind the counter. Nobody moves, nobody makes a sound. He grabbed his tactical vest from the closet, pulled it on in 3 seconds. Sig Sauer in hand, backup Glock secured, spare magazines in place. He moved to the window, reading the tactical situation with cold precision. The vehicle stopped 50 yards out, doors opening. 7 men emerged, all armed. Jack recognized Derek Moss from the diner, the Brennan brothers, and 4 others he didn't know. They spread out in a loose formation, professional enough to be worrying, not military, but trained, probably ex-cops or security contractors. Derek called out, voice carrying through the rain. Mercer, we know they're in there. Send them out. This doesn't have to involve you. Jack opened the door 6 inches, staying behind cover, Titan at his side, vibrating with controlled aggression. When he spoke, his voice was calm, flat, carrying the absolute certainty of someone who delivered ultimatums in Fallujah and Ramadi and Kandahar. You're on private property. You're armed. You've made threats. Leave now, or I treat you as hostile combatants. This is your only warning. Travis Brennan laughed, the sound ugly. Tough talk for one guy. There's 7 of us, asshole. Do the math. I have. Jack's voice didn't rise, didn't waver. I'm a Navy SEAL with 8 years in the teams. The dog next to me is a military working animal, trained to disable and kill on command. You're thugs who think guns make you dangerous. If you press this, 3 of you will be dead before you reach the porch. The rest will be bleeding and broken before the police arrive. And they are coming, because your threats have been recorded and reported. So do your own math. Is Marcus Hyland worth dying for? Silence. The kind that precedes violence or retreat. The balance point where decisions are made. Derek's hand moved toward his weapon. Jack's SIG was up and aimed in a fraction of a second. Red dot centered on Derek's chest. Don't. The tableau held. Rain falling. 7 men weighing odds. 1 operator and a weapon of a dog behind cover with superior position and the calm of someone who'd survived worse. The mathematics of violence rarely lied. Derek's phone rang, shrill in the tension. He answered, listened, his face going through expressions Jack read easily. Anger, confusion, fear. He ended the call and looked at his men. We're leaving. Boss says stand down. What? Why? Because the FBI just showed up at his office. Story went viral. State police are involved. And he says fighting here just makes it worse. Let's go. They retreated to their vehicles, slowly, nobody turning their backs, maintaining the fiction of tactical withdrawal rather than defeat. But Jack saw it in their posture, in the way Derek's shoulders slumped. They'd lost and they knew it. The vehicles drove away. Jack stayed at the window until they disappeared, until the motion sensors confirmed departure, until Titan finally relaxed and sat. Only then did he lower his weapon. Elena emerged from the closet, Sophie in her arms, both of them shaking. Is it over? Jack looked at the rain, at the forest, at the road that led back to a town that was finally paying attention to its monster. No, but we won the first battle. Now we finish the war. The storm broke that night with biblical fury. Rain hammered the cabin's roof like artillery, wind screaming through the pines hard enough to shake the walls. Sophie slept fitfully on the couch, wrapped in blankets, Titan pressed against her like a living shield. Elena sat at the table, hands wrapped around coffee that had gone cold hours ago, staring at nothing. Jack stood at the window, watching darkness and rain, phone pressed to his ear. His contact at the FBI, a woman named Agent Sarah Chen, who'd coordinated with his team on a hostage rescue in Nigeria 3 years back. The story created enough noise that we can't ignore it. Chen said, her voice professional but edged with something that might have been satisfaction. I've got authorization to open an investigation into Highland Development Corporation, racketeering, extortion, witness intimidation. If the pattern holds across state lines, we can bring federal charges that local corruption can't touch. How long? To build a case that sticks? 6 months minimum. To get warrants and start seizing records, 72 hours. I've got a team driving up from Portland tomorrow morning to interview witnesses and collect evidence. Highland won't wait 72 hours. He's desperate now. Cornered. That makes him more dangerous, not less. Can you keep your witnesses safe until then? Jack looked at Elena, at Sophie, at the people who'd become his responsibility through choices he couldn't quite explain. Yes. Then do that. We'll handle the rest. And Jack, good work. Not many people stand up to guys like Highland. Fewer succeed. Haven't succeeded yet. You're still breathing. That's success enough for tonight. He ended the call and checked his perimeter sensors for the 20th time. Nothing. The weather was too violent for approach. Visibility near zero. Roads turning to rivers. Nobody would move tonight. But tomorrow, when the storm passed, when desperation overrode caution, that's when things would get worse. Carla had left at dusk, promising to coordinate with state police and keep the story alive online. Tom had stayed, claiming his old bones couldn't handle the drive in this weather. But Jack suspected the former mayor wanted to see how this ended. The old man dozed in a chair, a borrowed shotgun across his lap, looking like something from a different era, when men settled problems more directly. At 2300 hours, Jack's phone lit up with a call from his former platoon sergeant, Miller. Got your surveillance data. Highlands at his compound north of town. Big property, gated, security cameras, the works. He's not alone. Counted at least 6 people coming and going. Your friends Derek Moss and the Brennan brothers are there. Also saw Sheriff Cullen's cruiser. They're planning something, Jack. The energy's wrong. Feels like pre-mission tension. How well defended is the compound? Chain link fence, 8 feet, top security, main gate with keypad. 2 cameras on the entrance. House is modern, lots of glass, probably alarmed. Big garage, 3 vehicles visible. Forest on the north and west sides. If I was hitting it, I'd come through the trees and bypass the gate entirely. I'm not hitting it. Sure you're not. Just thought you should know the layout, academically. Academically, thanks Miller. Watch your six. Guys like Highland don't go down quiet. Jack pocketed his phone and found Elena watching him from the table. She'd been quiet for hours, processing trauma and exhaustion, and the surreal reality of her life transforming into something from an action movie. You're thinking about going after him, she said, not a question. I'm thinking about ending this before anyone else gets hurt. That's the same thing. She stood, moved to the window beside him, looking out at the storm. In the diner, when those men threatened me, I saw something in your eyes, like you were calculating, running numbers, figuring out how to hurt them if you needed to. It was scary. But also, I'm ashamed to say, it was relief. Because I've been scared for so long, and suddenly there was someone who could fight back. I didn't come here to fight. I came here to forget. But you're fighting anyway. Why? Jack was quiet for a long moment, watching rain sheet across the glass, seeing ghosts in the darkness beyond. Because in Syria, 8 months ago, my team drove over an IED. I was in the lead vehicle. Should have seen it, should have detected it, should have called the halt. I didn't. 5 men died because I missed something. 5 brothers. Their families got folded flags and my signature on letters that couldn't explain why their sons and husbands weren't coming home. That wasn't your fault. Command agreed. Investigation cleared me. IED was sophisticated, undetectable by standard equipment. Insurgents had learned new concealment techniques. Nobody blamed me. He met her eyes, and she saw the weight he carried, the guilt that no investigation could absolve. Except me. So I came here to disappear, to not be responsible for anyone else's safety or survival, to just exist without consequence. But you can't. No, because I see Sophie and I see my gunner's daughter, same age, same eyes. Because I see you fighting alone, and I remember what it's like when nobody comes to help. Because maybe the only way to live with failing them is to not fail someone else. Elena reached out, put her hand over his, the gesture simple and profound. You didn't fail them, and you're not failing us. You're the only reason we're alive. Before Jack could respond, Titan's head snapped up. The dog stared at the door, ears forward, body going rigid. Not the aggressive posture of immediate threat, but the alert stance of something detected at distance. Jack moved to his laptop, pulled up the camera feeds. Nothing on the road sensors, nothing on the perimeter cameras. But Titan didn't false alarm, didn't react to nothing. Then he saw it. Thermal imaging from the northern camera, the one facing deep forest. Heat signatures, 3 of them, moving through the trees 200 yards out. Coming slow, careful, trying to approach undetected through the storm. Wake Tom, get Sophie to the closet, move. Jack pulled on his tactical vest, checked his weapons, grabbed night vision goggles from his gear bag. He moved to the door, Titan at his heel. Both of them transitioning to operational mode with the smooth efficiency of years of practice. Elena had Sophie awake and moving, the girl still half asleep but responding to her mother's urgency. Tom was up, shotgun ready, face grim. He'd been in Vietnam, knew this dance. 3 coming from the north, Jack said quietly. Probably scouts, seeing if we're awake, testing response. I'm going out. If shooting starts, stay down and stay quiet. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, call this number. He handed Elena a card with Agent Chen's direct line. Tell her what happened and do exactly what she says. Jack. You can't go out there alone. I'm not alone. He touched Titan's head. The dog was vibrating with controlled aggression, ready for the work he'd been trained for. We've done this before. We'll do it again. He slipped out into the storm, closing the door behind him, becoming part of the darkness and rain. The night vision goggles turned the world green and clear, rain appearing as streaks of static across his vision. He moved along the tree line, Titan ranging ahead. Both of them ghosts in the tempest. The 3 heat signatures were closer now, 150 yards, moving in a loose wedge formation. Jack circled wide, getting downwind, using the storm's noise as cover. Through the goggles he could see them clearly now. The Brennan brothers and another man, all carrying rifles, all moving with the awkward caution of people who'd learned tactics from movies instead of experience. Jack and Titan closed to 50 yards, 40, 30. The men were focused on the cabin, not watching their backs, making the fatal assumption that nobody would come through the storm to meet them. Jack picked up a fallen branch and threw it hard to the left. All three men spun toward the sound, rifles up, bunching together in instinctive fear. Amateur mistake. Never cluster in hostile territory. Jack stepped from the trees behind them. Sig Sauer up and aimed, voice cutting through the storm like a blade. Don't move. Don't turn around. Don't reach for anything. Hands on your heads. Now. They froze. Travis started to turn, and Jack fired once, the suppressed round snapping past his ear, close enough to feel. I said don't move. Next one goes in your knee. Hands, heads, now. They complied, the fight draining out of them as they realized they'd been outmaneuvered by someone who actually knew what he was doing. Jack moved forward, Titan at his side. That low growl promising violence if they twitched wrong. On your knees, rifles on the ground. Slow. They knelt in the mud, rain washing over them, probably realizing how badly they'd miscalculated. Jack collected their weapons, ejected the magazines, cleared the chambers, threw the parts in different directions into the forest. Who sent you? Silence. Kyle Brennan found some courage. Lawyer. We want our lawyer. You're not under arrest. I'm not a cop. I'm the guy you tried to kill, which means I'm well within my rights to defend myself and my property. So let me rephrase. Who sent you, and what were your orders? More silence. Jack sighed, nodded to Titan. The dog moved closer to Kyle, teeth visible, that growl building into something that bypassed rational thought and spoke directly to primal fear. Moss, Travis broke first. Derek Moss sent us. Said to scout the cabin. See if you were awake. Report back. That's all. Scout and report. Scout with rifles and body armor. Try again. Okay. We were supposed to scout, and if we had a shot, take it. You, not the women. Moss said you were the problem. Eliminate you, and everyone else folds. But that's all, I swear. We weren't going to hurt the kid. Just murder a man protecting a family. Much better. Jack pulled out his phone, took photos of all three, recorded a video of them kneeling in the mud. Here's what happens next. You walk back to wherever you came from. You tell Derek Moss and Marcus Highland that if they send anyone else, I won't be this polite. I won't call out warnings. I'll just make bodies disappear in forests that goes on for 100 miles. Clear? They nodded frantically. And gentlemen, FBI's coming tomorrow. State police already have your names from earlier. You've got maybe 12 hours to decide if you want to be accessories to attempted murder or if you want to cooperate with federal investigators. Choose wisely. He stepped back. Go. Don't run. Don't look back. Just walk away and think about your life choices. They scrambled up and fled into the forest, pride abandoned in favor of survival. Jack watched them disappear through his night vision, then swept the area one more time before returning to the cabin. Elena had the door open before he reached it, Sophie peering around her mother's legs, Tom covering the entrance with his shotgun. They all relaxed when they saw Jack and Titan, both unharmed, mission complete. 3 scouts, Jack reported, setting his weapons down. Sent them home with a message. They won't be back tonight. But Highland will send others. Probably, but It's running out of people willing to risk federal charges and me. Each time we push back, his position gets weaker. Jack pulled out his phone, sent the photos and video to Agent Chen with a brief explanation. Evidence for the growing case. Sophie approached slowly, looking up at Jack with those old eyes that had seen too much. You could have hurt them, but you didn't. Why? Because I'm not here to hurt people, Sophie. I'm here to protect them. There's a difference. My dad used to say that. He said there's always a choice between being scared and being brave. You chose brave. Something in Jack's chest, that calcified thing, cracked a little more. He crouched to her level. Your dad was right. And you know what? You're brave too. You stayed quiet when you were scared. You took care of your mom. You kept going even when things were hard. That's the bravest thing there is. She hugged him suddenly, fiercely. The way children do when they need an anchor in the storm. Jack held her carefully, this small person who'd become his responsibility, and felt the weight of it settle alongside the other weights he carried. But this weight was different. This one felt right. Elena was crying silently, hand over her mouth. Tom looked away, giving them privacy. But Jack saw the old man wipe his eyes. The storm raged on outside, but inside the cabin, for just a moment. There was something like peace. Jack's phone buzzed. Message from Agent Chen. Video received. That's attempted murder, conspiracy, and half a dozen other charges. We're accelerating the timeline. Team will be there at 0600. Keep everyone safe until then. Jack typed back. Roger that. 6 hours until dawn. 6 hours until federal protection arrived. 6 hours to hold the line against a desperate man with everything to lose. Jack settled by the window, Titan at his side, and watched the darkness. He'd held harder lines in worse places. This time, he wouldn't fail dawn. Arrived gray and exhausted, the storm had passed sometime around 0400, leaving the world dripping and quiet. Jack hadn't slept. He'd maintained watch through the night, rotating between windows and camera feeds, tracking every shadow and sound while Elena and Sophie slept under Tom's protective gaze. At 0530, Jack's phone buzzed. Agent Chen. We're 15 minutes out. Convoy of 3 vehicles, federal agents and state police. Once we arrive, you're relieved. Family goes into protective custody until we can guarantee security. Understood. We'll be ready. He woke Elena gently, explained the situation. She looked relieved and terrified simultaneously, the expression of someone who'd lived in crisis so long that safety felt dangerous. Sophie stirred, Titan immediately alert beside her. The dog having maintained his self-appointed guard duty through the night. Tom was already awake, coffee brewing, shotgun still within reach. The old man had the exhausted satisfaction of someone who'd survived to see dawn after expecting worse. SBI's almost here, Jack said. This part's almost over. Almost. Tom poured coffee with hands that trembled slightly from age and adrenaline hangover. But Highland's still out there. Cornered animals most dangerous right before the end. Jack's instincts agreed. His phone showed no activity on perimeter sensors, no movement on cameras, but the stillness felt wrong. Tactical pause before final push. The moment when desperation overrode reason. At 0545, Titan's head snapped up, ears forward, body rigid, staring at the door. Not the alert posture from last night. This was different, urgent. Jack moved to the window, scanning the approach road. Nothing visible. Checked the cameras. Northern approach clear. Western approach clear. Eastern approach clear. Southern approach, the road, showed. 3 vehicles racing toward the cabin, moving fast. Too fast for the muddy road. Not the careful approach of law enforcement. The desperate speed of people who'd run out of options and time. Contact, Jack snapped. Elena, Sophie, closet now. Tom, behind the counter. Nobody moves until I say. He grabbed his rifle. An AR-15 he'd kept locked in his truck, loaded and ready. Moved to the door, Titan at his side. Through the window, he counted vehicles and occupants. 2 trucks and the SUV from yesterday. At least 8 people visible, all armed. They stopped 50 yards out, doors opening. Derek Moss emerged from the lead truck, looking like he hadn't slept. Face haggard with the desperate energy of a man watching his world collapse. The Brennan brothers were there. Along with 4 others Jack recognized from yesterday's standoff. And one more, stepping from the SUV's passenger side. Marcus Highland himself, 52 years old, silver hair styled perfectly despite the early hour, wearing an expensive suit that had no business in a muddy logging road. He carried himself with the arrogance of someone who'd bought his way out of consequences his entire life. And couldn't quite believe that wasn't working anymore. Highland called out. Voice carrying the authoritative tone of boardrooms and command. Mercer, I'm here to negotiate, face to face, businessman to businessman. Jack opened the door 6 inches, rifle ready, Titan's growl audible. Nothing to negotiate. FBI arrives in 10 minutes. State police right behind them. You're done, Highland. Smart move is to leave now, get a lawyer, and hope for a plea deal. 10 minutes is enough time to end this differently. Highland stepped forward, hands visible, empty. Playing reasonable despite the armed men behind him. I'm offering $500,000. Elena's property at fair market value, plus an additional $200,000 for her trouble and trauma. She signs, we both walk away, nobody else gets hurt. You broke into her house, assaulted her, threatened her child. There's no walking away from that. I didn't do anything. Overzealous employees acting without authorization. I've already fired them. I'll testify to that. Elena gets her money. I express my deepest apologies, and we all move on. Jack almost admired the play. Throw his people under the bus, claim ignorance, lave enough money to make prosecution complicated. Except it was too late for that, and Hyland's desperation showed in the tightness around his eyes. No. Deal. And your 10 minutes is now 8 minutes. Leave. Hyland's mask slipped. The reasonable businessman disappeared, replaced by something cold and ugly. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're a hero? You're a killer with PTSD hiding in the woods. I've got lawyers who'll bury you. I've got connections that reach Washington. When this is over, I'll own you. 7 minutes. Derek. Hyland's voice went flat. Plan B. Derek Moss pulled his weapon. So did the others. 8 guns coming up simultaneously, trained on the cabin. Jack's rifle was already aimed, center mass on Hyland, his breathing calm despite the tactical nightmare unfolding. Last chance, Derek called. Send them out. Elena and the girl. They come with us, we leave you alone. FBI can have me, can have all of us. But Hyland needs those signatures and he's getting them. One way or another. Jack's tactical mind ran calculations. 8 hostiles, decent spacing. Cover available behind vehicles. He had superior position, but inferior numbers. Could drop maybe 3 before taking return fire. Stone walls would stop some rounds, but not all. Elena and Sophie were behind concrete, but stray rounds could ricochet. Titan could take 1 hostile, but would draw fire. Acceptable losses in a war zone. Unacceptable here. But he also had something they didn't. Time. And knowledge that help was minutes away. You're not thinking clearly, Jack said, voice calm, conversational. You've already lost. FBI has everything. Witness testimony, financial records, pattern of criminal enterprise. Taking hostages just adds federal kidnapping charges. Life sentences instead of maybe 10 years with good behavior. Math doesn't work, Derek. You're too smart not to see that. Derek wavered. Jack saw it in his posture, the way his weapon dipped slightly. A man realizing he'd been led to a cliff edge and told to jump. But Hyland couldn't see what Jack saw, couldn't read the tactical situation because he'd never been in one. He only knew that his empire was crumbling and he needed control back. Shoot the door, Hyland ordered. Shoot until they comply. Time crystallized, decisions compressed into fractions of seconds. Jack's training, 8 years of situations exactly like this, took over. He dropped behind cover, shouted, Titan, guard, and the dog moved instantly to block the closet door, where Sophie and Elena hid. The first rounds hit the cabin's walls, wood splintering, glass shattering. Jack returned fire, controlled bursts, aiming for center mass on Derek Moss. The man went down, body armor stopping the rounds but kinetic impact dropping him. Travis Brennan next, 2 rounds, same result. Not killing, just removing pieces from the board. Then the world exploded with new sound. Sirens, multiple vehicles, loudspeakers commanding everyone to drop weapons. The FBI convoy arriving not in 10 minutes but now, accelerated by Agent Chen monitoring the situation remotely through Jack's phone connection. 3 black SUVs, doors opening, agents emerging with rifles and tactical gear, creating a perimeter with professional speed. State police cars right behind, lights painting the dawn red and blue. Agent Chen's voice through megaphone, clear and absolute. Federal agents, drop your weapons, hands on your heads. You're surrounded. Comply immediately. The equation changed instantly. Hyland's men dropped guns like they were burning, hands up, faces showing the relief of people who'd nearly done something unforgivable and been saved from themselves. Derek Moss struggled upright, hands raised, body armor dented but intact. The Brennan brothers followed. Their brief moment of resistance ended by overwhelming force. Only Marcus Hyland didn't move. He stood frozen, expensive suit muddy and torn, face cycling through disbelief, rage, and finally hollow acceptance. His empire, his power, his carefully constructed world of bought influence and intimidated victims, all collapsing in the gray dawn light. Jack stepped from the cabin, rifle lowered, hands visible. Agent Chen approached, 40 years old, Asian American, wearing FBI tactical gear and an expression of professional satisfaction. Mr. Mercer, you all right? Fine. Family inside is secure. Suspects are all accounted for. Good work. She looked at the scene, at the suspects being cuffed by her team, at Marcus Hyland standing alone and defeated. We monitored your phone connection, heard the whole thing. That's confession to conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, assault. Combined with everything else, we're looking at RICO charges across the board. She moved to Hyland, badge out. Marcus Hyland, I'm Special Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. You're under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, extortion, witness intimidation, and about 15 other charges I'll explain when we get to Portland. You have the right to remain silent. Hyland's lawyer would eventually argue coercion, claim his client was desperate and not thinking clearly. None of it would matter. The case was airtight, built on testimony, financial records, and Hyland's own words recorded through Jack's phone. Elena emerged from the cabin slowly. Sophie pressed against her side, both of them shaking but alive. They watched federal agents securing the scene with the dazed expression of survivors, still processing that survival. Sophie saw Jack and ran to him, wrapping small arms around his waist. You kept your promise. You stopped them. Jack crouched, meeting her eyes. I had help. Your mom's courage, Tom's support, Carla's journalism, the FBI doing their job. That's how you beat people like Hyland. Everyone standing together. Agent Chen approached Elena. Mrs. Vasquez, we need to get detailed statements from everyone. It'll take most of the day. After that, you're free to go home. We'll have protection on your house until trial, but threats essentially over. Hyland's organization is done. My house, Elena's voice broke. After what they did to it, federal victims' assistance will cover repairs and temporary housing. You'll also be entitled to restitution through asset forfeiture. Hyland's got properties worth millions. You'll be compensated. Tom emerged, shotgun broken open and safe, looking satisfied in a deep way. Took 50 years, but I finally saw justice come to Pine Haven. Thought I'd die before that. It happened. The next hours blurred into statements and evidence collection. Jack walked federal agents through everything, provided his documentation, turned over recordings and photographs. Derek Moss, facing decades in prison, flipped immediately, providing detailed testimony about Hyland's organization. The Brennan brothers followed. The dominoes fell with satisfying speed. By noon, the cabin was quiet again. Federal agents had left, taking the suspects to Portland for arraignment. State police maintained presence in town, securing evidence and interviewing additional witnesses. Carla was already writing the follow-up story. Justice delivered after her exposé. Elena and Sophie sat on the cabin's porch, wrapped in blankets, watching clouds break apart and sunlight finally appear. Titan lay at Sophie's feet, accepting ear scratches with the patience of a dog who understood his job was done. Jack found Elena staring at the forest, expression unreadable. You okay? I don't know. I thought I'd feel relieved, happy. Instead, I just feel empty. Like I used up everything I had just surviving, and now there's nothing left. That's normal. Adrenaline crash, trauma processing. Give it time. You'll find your balance. What about you? Where do you go from here? Jack looked at the cabin, at the forest, at the isolation he'd sought. My leave ends in 2 weeks. After that, I'm officially retired. No orders, no mission, no structure. First time in my adult life I get to choose what comes next. You could stay. Pine Haven could use someone like you. Someone who stands up. Pine Haven needs to learn to stand up for itself. It's got good people. Tom, Carla, you. Now that Hyland's gone, maybe it can remember how to be a community instead of a victim. Sophie looked up from petting Titan. Will Titan stay? Can we still visit him? Jack smiled, the expression feeling strange on his face. Yeah, you can visit. Bring chicken from the diner. He'd like that. Agent Chen returned at 1400 hours, looking tired but victorious. Arraignment's done. Hyland's remanded without bail, flight risk. Derek Moss is cooperating fully. State's attorney is building cases on Sheriff Cullen and 3 city council members. This goes deep, but we're pulling out every route. Elena and Sophie. Free to go home once we finish processing their statements. Protection detail for 90 days, longer if needed. They'll be safe. Jack nodded, feeling the weight lift slightly. Mission complete. Objective secured. The family he'd promised to protect was safe. Chen studied him with the evaluating gaze of someone who recognized capability. You know, SDI can always use contractors with your skill set. Training, consultant work, hostage rescue advisory. You ever want something more structured than retirement, give me a call. I'll think about it. She handed him a card, nodded once, and left to coordinate the ongoing investigation. Evening settled over the mountains, bringing cold clarity after the storm. Elena and Sophie prepared to leave, their few belongings packed, a state police car waiting to escort them home and stand guard while they reclaimed their violated sanctuary. Sophie hugged Jack one final time. Thank you for being brave, for helping us when nobody else would. You helped me too, reminded me what the training and fighting were actually for, not just survival, protection. Elena shook his hand, holding it longer than necessary. If you need anything, ever, you call. We owe you everything. You don't owe me anything. Just live well. Raise your daughter. Be happy. That's payment enough. They drove away, police escort following, taillights disappearing around the bend. Tom had left an hour earlier, eager to spread news of Hyland's arrest through town. Carlo was working phones, coordinating with national media who'd picked up the story. Jack stood on the porch with Titan, watching darkness settle over the forest. Quiet returned, the isolation he'd sought. But it felt different now. Less like hiding, more like choosing. Less like running from ghosts, more like finding peace with them. His phone showed messages, his sister, proud and relieved. His former CO, offering congratulations and job prospects. Miller, his platoon sergeant, with a simple, well done, brother. And one from Agent Chen. Meant what I said. You're too good at this to stop. When you're ready, we'll be here. Jack looked at Titan. The dog stared back with knowing eyes, partner and witness to everything that had happened. What do you think? Retirement or one-year mission? Titan's tail swept once. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The way they always had, the way they always would. Because somewhere out there, someone else would need protection. Some other monster would need stopping. Some other fight would need a warrior willing to stand. And when that call came, Jack Mercer would answer. Not because he had to, but because now, finally, he remembered why he wanted to. 3 weeks passed like water finding its level after a flood. The town of Pinehaven transformed in small but significant ways. Sheriff Cullen resigned 2 days after his arrest, replaced by a state-appointed interim who actually answered calls and investigated complaints. 3 city council members stepped down amid federal scrutiny. Tom Breslin, at 70 years old, agreed to serve as temporary mayor until special elections could be organized. The Harbor Diner became something of a pilgrimage site. People came from surrounding towns to meet Elena, to hear the story firsthand, to see the woman who'd stood against Marcus Hyland and won. She handled the attention with grace tinged with exhaustion, still working her shifts, but now with a lightness that hadn't existed before. The owner, grateful for the publicity and ashamed he hadn't helped sooner, gave her a raise and promoted her to manager. Sophie returned to school surrounded by protection that gradually relaxed as threat assessment confirmed what everyone hoped. Hyland's organization had collapsed completely. The girl still had nightmares, still startled at loud sounds, but she laughed more, played more, started being 9 years old again instead of a small adult carrying impossible weight. Jack watched it all from his deliberate distance, maintaining the isolation. Yen he'd come for, but no longer hiding behind it. He drove into town twice a week for supplies, stopped at the diner for coffee, accepted Tom's invitation to dinner once, small connections that didn't feel like imprisonment anymore. Titan accompanied him everywhere, the dog's presence both comfort and reminder. They ran every morning through the forest, miles of silent communication and shared purpose. The dog's shoulder had healed completely, that slight hitch disappearing with rest and recovery. He was 4 years old, prime of his life for a working dog, still capable of everything he'd been trained for. On a Tuesday morning, crisp and cold with autumn deepening toward winter, Jack returned from his run to find a familiar Subaru parked outside his cabin. Carla Ruiz sat on his porch steps, laptop bag beside her, looking like she'd been waiting a while. "Morning," she called. "Hope you don't mind the ambush." "Tried calling, but service out here is terrible." Jack climbed the steps, Titan moving to sniff Carla in greeting. What can I do for you? Actually, I'm here about what I can do for you. Or maybe what we can do together. She pulled a folder from her bag, handed it over. Remember how I said Highland's pattern repeated across multiple towns? I've been digging deeper. Found 11 similar cases in Oregon and Washington over the past 5 years. Different developers. Different tactics, but same basic playbook. Identify vulnerable property owners, apply pressure through legal and illegal means, force sales. Jack opened the folder. Property records, news clippings, testimony from victims. The evidence was meticulously organized, color-coded, cross-referenced. Carla's investigative work at its finest. Some of these cases are still active, she continued. People currently being targeted, currently living in fear, currently fighting alone the way Elena was. Local authorities won't help, either corrupted or overwhelmed. These people need someone who'll stand up for them. They need lawyers, investigators, federal oversight. They need all that, yes, but they also need someone who can provide immediate protection while the legal system catches up. Someone with tactical training and the moral compass to use it correctly. Someone like you. Jack studied the files, seeing patterns, recognizing the same predatory behavior that had targeted Elena. Each case represented families, children, lives being destroyed by people who viewed compassion as weakness and money as absolution. You're proposing what exactly? I become some kind of traveling vigilante? I'm proposing a partnership. I investigate, you protect. I build legal cases while you provide security for witnesses who need it. We work with FBI, state police, legitimate authority, but we fill the gap that exists between when someone calls for help and when help actually arrives. The gap where people like Elena get hurt or killed. That's not sustainable. One person can't protect everyone. One person can protect some people, more than are being protected now. And maybe if we do it right, document it correctly, we create a model that others can replicate. Prove that standing up works, that community defense is possible, that predators can be stopped. Jack looked at Titan. The dog watched him with intelligent eyes, waiting for direction, ready for whatever came next. 4 years old. Prime of his life. Too much capability to waste on retirement. I'm not a hero, Carla. I'm a guy with specific training trying to figure out what to do with it now that the war's over. The war's not over. It just changed locations. Highland wasn't an aberration, he was a symptom. Corporate predators exploiting vulnerable people because they know nobody will stop them. You stopped one. You can stop others. She stood, gathering her things. I'm not asking for an answer today. I'm asking you to think about it. Meanwhile, I've got something you should see. Happening in Gold Beach, 60 miles south. Developer named Richard Kane, same pattern as Highland. Target is a 72-year-old veteran named Frank Morrison, Purple Heart recipient. Owns beachfront property Kane wants for resort development. Frank's wife died last year. His daughter's trying to help, but she's got 2 kids and a job in Portland. Kane's people slashed Frank's tires yesterday, broke his mailbox, left a dead cat on his porch. Rage flashed through Jack, cold and controlled, targeting a veteran, desecrating a man's home while he grieved his wife. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. Just think about it, Carla said, reading his expression. Frank's daughter called me yesterday, desperate. I told her I might know someone who could help. Gave her your number. If she calls, answer it. Or don't. Choice is yours. She drove away, leaving Jack standing on his porch with a folder full of other people's suffering, and a decision that felt inevitable, but terrifying. That afternoon, Jack drove into town, ostensibly for groceries, but really to see Elena. She was wiping down tables when he entered. Sophie doing homework in a corner booth, backpack covered in new patches and pins. Signs of a child reclaiming normalcy. Elena saw him and smiled, genuine warmth replacing the wariness that had characterized their early interactions. Jack, coffee? Please, and maybe some advice. They sat in a booth away from other customers, Titan settling under the table, Sophie coming over to pet the dog while her mother talked with the man who'd saved their lives. Jack explained Carla's proposal, the folder of cases, the phone call that might come from Frank Morrison's daughter. Elena listened without interrupting, hands wrapped around her own coffee mug, face thoughtful. You're asking if you should help, she said when he finished. But I think you're really asking if you're allowed to stop helping. If you've done enough and can walk away clean. I came here to retire, to disappear. To stop being responsible for other people's survival. How's that working out? Jack laughed despite himself. Not great. You know what Miguel used to say? My husband. He worked in the logging industry. Dangerous job. Lost friends to accidents. He said some people are built to build things and some people are built to protect things. Both are necessary. Both are honorable, but you can't switch between them just because you're tired. It's not about what you want, it's about what you are. What if what I am gets people hurt? What if I fail again? Elena reached across the table, put her hand over his. You didn't fail us. You kept your promise. And that Frank Morrison in Gold Beach, if his daughter calls you and you answer, you won't fail him either. Because you're not trying to be perfect, you're just trying to help. That's enough. Sophie looked up from petting Titan. Are you going to save someone else, like you saved us? Jack met the girl's eyes, seeing trust there, belief that he was something he didn't quite believe himself. Hero, protector, someone who made the world safer just by being in it. Maybe, if they need help. They will. Bad people don't stop being bad just because one of them got caught. Someone has to stop them. 9 years old and already understanding what took Jack decades to accept. That evil didn't disappear. It just moved to softer targets. That protection wasn't optional for those capable of providing it. His phone rang. Unknown number. Gold Beach area code. Jack looked at Elena, at Sophie, at Titan waiting patiently under the table. Then he answered. This is Jack Mercer. Mr. Mercer, my name is Jennifer Morrison. Carla Ruiz gave me your number. She said you might be able to help my father. I know this is a lot to ask. We're strangers. You don't owe us anything. But I don't know where else to turn, and I'm terrified they're going to kill him. The woman's voice broke on the last word. Fear and exhaustion and desperation combining into a plea Jack recognized intimately. Tell me what's happening. She talked for 10 minutes, story depressingly familiar. Developer wanting property. Escalating pressure. Authorities doing nothing. Old man standing alone against inevitable tide. Her father refused to leave the house his wife had died in. Refused to surrender ground he'd paid for with 60 years of work and sacrifice. I can come down this weekend, but I can't stay, Jennifer continued. I've got kids, a job, a life in Portland. But my dad's alone down there, and these people are getting more aggressive, and I'm scared that one morning I'll get a call that he's been hurt or worse. Jack looked at Elena. She nodded, mouthing, go. Mrs. Morrison, I can be in Gold Beach in 2 hours. I'll assess the situation and determine if I can help. No promises beyond that, but I'll look. Silence on the line, then crying, relief and gratitude pouring through the phone. Thank you, God. Thank you. I'll text you the address. Whatever you need, whatever it costs, I'll find a way to pay. We'll figure that out later. Right now, just send the address and tell your father help is coming. He ended the call, finished his coffee, and stood. Elena stood too, moved around the table, and hugged him. Not romantic, not desperate. Just the embrace of someone who recognized kinship in shared survival. Be careful. Come back when it's done. You've got people here who care what happens to you. I will. Sophie hugged him too, then hugged Titan, whispering something in the dog's ear that made his tail wag. Probably instructions to keep Jack safe. Responsibilities the dog took seriously. Jack drove back to the cabin, packed a go bag with practiced efficiency. Clothes, weapons, medical supplies, tactical gear. Everything needed for a mission of uncertain duration and definite danger. Titan watched from the doorway, reading the preparation, understanding what it meant. You ready for this? Back to work, back to protecting people who need it. Titan's tail swept once. Agreement, anticipation, purpose. Jack loaded the truck, secured his gear, took one last look at the cabin that had been his refuge and prison both. Then he climbed in, Titan in the passenger seat, and drove toward Gold Beach. Toward another family that needed protection, another fight that needed fighting, another chance to prove that standing up worked, that good people didn't have to face evil alone, that one person with courage and capability could make a difference. The mountains fell away behind him, replaced by coastal forest and the smell of salt air. His phone showed messages from Agent Chen, offering resources if needed. From Miller, his old platoon sergeant, saying, "Heard you're back in the game. About damn time." From Carla, "Thank you. I'll meet you in Gold Beach tomorrow with everything I've got on Kane. We're going to stop him." Jack drove through autumn afternoon, Titan beside him, purpose settling over them both like familiar armor. This wasn't the retirement he'd imagined, wasn't the peace he'd sought. But maybe peace wasn't about absence of conflict. Maybe it was about choosing which conflicts mattered, which fights deserved your strength, which people earned your loyalty. Elena and Sophie had earned it. Frank Morrison would earn it. Others would earn it. And Jack would answer, again and again, because that's what protectors did. Not because it was easy or safe or rewarding, but because it was right. The war hadn't ended. It had just found new battlefields. And Jack Mercer, retired Navy SEAL, had found his place in it. Not hiding from responsibility, embracing it, not running from the past, honoring it by protecting the future, one family at a time, one stand at a time, one promise kept at a time. Because somewhere ahead, an old man stood alone against predators who thought his age made him weak. They were about to learn different. Jack smiled, rare and genuine, and pressed the accelerator. Titan's head came up, ears forward, body alert. Mission accepted. Target acquired. Moving to engage, the way they always did, the way they always would, together. 3 months later, winter settled over the Oregon coast with cold clarity. Jack stood on the porch of Frank Morrison's house, watching morning fog burn off the ocean, coffee steaming in his hands. The old veteran was inside, safe, his property secure, Richard Kane, facing federal charges that mirrored Marcus Hyland's fate. Another predator stopped, another family protected. It had taken 2 weeks to dismantle Kane's operation. Shorter than Hyland, because Jack and Carla had learned from the first fight, refined their methods, built better connections with federal authorities. Agent Chen had assigned a liaison, Sun, to work with them, streamlining evidence collection and witness protection. The model was working. Frank emerged from the house, 72 years old, but moving with the upright dignity of a man who'd served his country and never forgotten what that meant. He carried 2 plates of eggs and bacon, homemade breakfast, as thanks for protection he'd needed, but hated requiring. "You heading back to Pine Haven today?" Frank asked, settling into a porch chair that faced the ocean his wife had loved. "This afternoon. Got a call yesterday about a situation in Coos Bay. Family being pressured off their fishing boat dock by corporate marina development. Thought I'd check it out on the way." "You can't save everyone, son." "No, but I can save some. That's more than we're being saved before." Frank nodded, understanding in his weathered face. "Jennifer wants to pay you. Says she's got savings, wants to do something to show gratitude. Tell her to donate it to a veterans organization. Or better yet, use it to help the next person who needs it. That's how this works. We help each other. Marines taught me that in 1969, took you SEALs a bit longer to figure it out." Frank's smile took any sting from the inter-service rivalry. "What you're doing, you and that reporter girl, it matters. People are noticing. Got a call last week from a cousin in Washington. Said there's talk about you on veteran forums. The SEAL who protects communities that can't protect themselves. They're calling you a hero." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just a guy doing what needs doing." "That's what heroes always say." Titan appeared around the corner of the house, having completed his morning perimeter check, a routine the dog maintained whether in combat zones or coastal cottages. He settled at Jack's feet, patient and watchful, partner in everything that mattered. Jack's phone buzzed. Message from Elena. "Sophie's birthday is next week. She wants you here. Says Titan needs to come too. No pressure, but your family now, whether you like it or not." He smiled, typed back. "We'll be there. Tell her Titan says happy early birthday." Another message from Carla. "Coos Bay case looks solid. Corporate malfeasance, environmental violations, intimidation of local fishermen. Could be bigger than Highland. Meet me there tomorrow." "Roger that." Agent Chen next. "Your work is attracting attention at headquarters. Good attention. Deputy Director wants to discuss formalizing your arrangement. Consultant contract, federal backing, resources. Call me when you have time. Finally, Miller. Heard about Gold Beach, clean work. Some of the old team is asking about you, wondering if you're taking applications. Might have interest in what you're building." Jack pocketed the phone, looking out at the ocean, at the fog-revealing coastline in patches, like truth emerging through concealment. Somewhere out there, people were being threatened, families were being pressured. Vulnerable communities were facing predators who thought power meant immunity. But somewhere out there, people were also standing up, learning that resistance worked, discovering that they weren't alone. Pine Haven had changed. The town had found its spine again. Elected Tom as permanent mayor, started community watch programs, demanded accountability from authorities. Elena had started a support group for victims of intimidation, providing resources and connection. Sophie was helping too, in her 9-year-old way, making cards for people going through hard times, reminding them that being brave mattered. The model was spreading. Other communities were reaching out, inspired by the story, asking how they could protect themselves, how they could stand together. Carla's articles had been picked up nationally, sparking conversations about corporate predation and community defense. It wasn't perfect. Jack still had nightmares about Syria, about his team, about the bomb he hadn't detected. Still woke at 3 a.m. with guilt that wouldn't fully release its grip. But the nightmares were less frequent now. The guilt was still there, but it was balanced by purpose, by lives saved instead of lost, by promises kept instead of broken. Frank finished his breakfast, stood with the careful movements of old injuries and older age. You've got people waiting for you, people who need what you offer. Don't keep them waiting on account of an old man who's already been saved. You're sure you'll be okay? Kane's in custody, but his people are still around. FBI's got protection on me for 90 days, state police checking in daily. And Jennifer's moving back next month to help me run this place as a bed and breakfast. I'm surrounded by more help than I know what to do with. You did your job, son. Time to move on to the next one. They shook hands, veteran to veteran, understanding passing between them that didn't need words. Jack loaded his truck, Titan jumping into the passenger seat with practiced ease, go bag already packed and ready for whatever came next. As he drove away, Jack glanced in the rearview mirror. Frank stood on his porch, hand raised in farewell, safe in the home he'd fought to keep, dignity intact, life reclaimed. Another victory, another family protected, another promise kept. The coast highway stretched ahead, winding through forest and alongside cliffs where the Pacific crashed eternal and indifferent. Jack drove with windows cracked despite the cold, Titan's head out slightly, both of them breathing salt air and freedom. His phone showed the developing case file from Carla. Family of fishermen, 3 generations working the same dock, facing buyout pressure from corporate marina expansion. Threats escalating. Equipment sabotaged. Youngest son, 24 years old, assaulted in a parking lot as morning. The pattern was familiar. The response would be to assess, protect, investigate, expose, prosecute. The model they'd refined through Highland and Kane. Each case making them better, more efficient, more effective. But it wasn't just about stopping individual predators anymore. It was about changing the equation, making predators think twice because word was spreading that some communities fought back, that some victims had protection, that standing up didn't mean standing alone. Jack passed through a small town, stopping at a gas station. While filling up, an old woman approached, hesitant but determined. She was 70-ish, wearing a jacket that had seen better decades, carrying herself with the careful pride of someone who'd learned to expect disappointment but refused to surrender dignity. "Excuse me, are you Jackson Mercer, the man from the news stories?" Jack tensed, old instinct to avoid recognition warring with new understanding that sometimes recognition served purpose. "Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to say thank you. Not for me, for my niece. She lives in Pine Haven, was being harassed by her landlord, threats and intimidation over rent dispute. After what you did to Marcus Highland, after the whole town started standing up, her landlord backed down. She got legal help, documentation, justice. Because you showed everyone that fighting back works." The woman's eyes welled. "You probably don't remember her, might never have even met her, but she told me about you. About Elena Vasquez, about how one person standing up inspired a whole community. I wanted you to know that what you're doing matters, that you're changing more than just the people you directly help. You're changing what people believe is possible." She pressed something into his hand, a small wooden cross, handmade, worn smooth with handling. "That was my husband's. He was Army, Vietnam, carried it through 2 tours. He passed 5 years ago, but he'd want you to have it. He always said the real heroes weren't the ones looking for glory. They were the ones who couldn't walk past someone in trouble. That's you." She walked away before Jack could respond, leaving him standing at a gas pump, holding a dead soldier's cross. and trying to process that his choices had rippled beyond what he could see or control. Titan watched through the truck window, patient and knowing. The dog had seen Jack struggle with purpose, with identity, with the question of what came after war. Maybe Titan had known the answer before Jack did. That warriors didn't retire, they just found new battles, new people to protect, new promises to keep. Jack climbed back in the truck, set the cross on the dashboard where he could see it, and continued south toward Coos Bay, toward another family that needed help, another fight that needed fighting, another chance to prove that courage mattered, that justice was possible, that good people didn't have to face evil alone. The highway curved along the coast, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Ahead, storm clouds gathered, promising rain and difficulty. Behind, communities were healing, families were whole, predators were facing consequences. Jack's phone buzzed one more time. Message from Sophie, dictated by her mother. "Thank you for teaching me to be brave. When I grow up, I want to help people like you do. Titan is invited to my birthday, and he has to wear a party hat. Love, Sophie." Attached was a photo. Sophie and Elena at the harbor diner, smiling, safe, living the life they'd almost lost. In the background, other families, other survivors, building community from shared trauma and mutual support. This was why. This was the answer to every question about purpose and meaning that had plagued Jack since Syria. Not to prevent all suffering, because that was impossible, but to stand between predators and prey when nobody else would. To give vulnerable people time and space to find their own strength. To prove that power didn't have to mean immunity, that wealth didn't guarantee victory, that doing right still mattered. Titan's ears perked up, attention focusing ahead on something Jack couldn't yet see. The dog's body language shifted to alert status. Not aggressive, but ready. Whatever was coming, they'd face it together. Jack drove on through gathering storm, heading toward another fight, another family, another promise. Behind him, communities were learning to protect themselves. Ahead, more communities waited for the same lesson. And in his truck, carrying everything he needed, accompanied by the most loyal partner he'd ever known, Jack Mercer had finally found what he'd been searching for when he came to Pine Haven looking for peace. Not the absence of conflict, the presence of purpose. Not escape from responsibility, embrace of it. Not retirement from war, evolution of it into something that built instead of destroyed, protected instead of eliminated, gave hope instead of taking it away. The rain started, cold and steady, washing the windshield in rhythmic waves. Jack turned on the wipers, adjusted his grip on the wheel, and smiled. Somewhere ahead, a family of fishermen waited. Somewhere beyond that, other families, other fights. Other chances to stand up and be counted. And for every single one, Jack and Titan would answer the call. Because that's what protectors did. That's what warriors became when the shooting war ended, but the real war, the fight for justice and dignity, and the right of good people to live without fear, that war continued. And Jackson Mercer, 34 years old, retired Navy SEAL, had finally found his place in it. Not as a hero, as a helper, as a guardian, as someone who remembered that the oath to protect didn't expire just because the uniform came off. The storm intensified, but Jack drove steady and sure. Titan beside him, mission accepted, promise made, purpose clear. Ahead, somewhere in the rain, people waited who didn't know help was coming. But it was, and it would keep coming, again and again, as long as Jack had breath and Titan had strength, and people needed someone to stand between them and the darkness. That was enough. That was everything. That was peace. The road stretched on, and they followed it together, into storm and purpose, and the next fight that needed fighting. Always forward, always together, always ready. Because somewhere out there, when duty called, they would answer, every single time. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Jack's position? Would you have stayed hidden or stood up to fight? Your thoughts and support keep these stories alive and remind us all that courage still matters in this world. God bless you all, and remember, sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand. Be that person.